My name is Jaime Herrera Beutler. I grew up in Southwest Washington in Clark County, and had the privilege of serving in the state legislature and now getting to serve the entire region, the people of the 3rd Congressional District, in DC. And part of why I'm running is because it's very simple. I actually believe that the government should serve people, not the other way around. I don't believe the government's the dictator, the owner, the boss. I think that the people are, and I think that's part of how our founders set it up, and it gives us, we the people, the best shot at life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And so most of my policies and most of what I work on and focus on has that edge to it. I want to make sure that we're empowering people, not controlling them.
Very good. We'll start with a local issue for us with winter approaching. Obviously flooding is always a topic, but it seems to come up each year in October. What do you see as being the solution to the issue, and what, if anything, can be done at the federal level or is being done at the federal level?
Yeah, this is one of the biggest issues facing, I know it faces this region and the Twin Cities, but really all of Western Washington, and through that the rest of the state. I mean, this is an important throughput for commerce, and moving forward. So it's a huge issue. I don't think people should have to worry every time it rains, whether or not this is the big rain and it's time to try and put your stuff in the attic or to move out. That shouldn't happen. So there's kind of a timeline of events right now. Currently, I have worked closely with the Basin Work Group. In trying to provide help and expertise. I actually put a legislation in place this last year to direct USDOT to provide their resources and their expertise to the work group as they move forward with a solution that will fit the basin, a basin-wide solution. I've talked with the governor about this, and I think from what he said, I believe we're on the same page. My hope is that the work group will provide their recommendations for what they want here, in time for the governor's budget in December. I worked with the governor's predecessor on this as well, and she was fabulous. I think that if they're able to get that information in time, I sense that we have a really strong opportunity in getting something in the capital budget. And then as far as the feds go, 2 years ago, when it seemed like the Army Corps was more of a lead in this project, I was asked to help stop the I-5 only solution, which I did. I mean, we offered legislation and then worked with Army Corps and said that's not going to work. So as we get the new recommendations for what will work from the working group, I'm happy to go to bat federally. And I think whether it's resources, or expertise, or perhaps, I think I-5 is still a responsibility of the federal government. Perhaps we can find a way to help with paying for it as well. So we'll see. I'm happy to go to bat.
Are you familiar with Richard DeBolt's tact and $4 billion for statewide water projects?
I've heard bits and pieces. I can't speak to the entirety of the project. I know that he is committed to protecting this region, and it's a good thing.
I know the legislation doesn't exist yet, so we won't hold you accountable.
I've heard bits and pieces.
Yeah. It exists in Richard's head for now. One of the, actually, back up a second. On the state level, voters are going to be deciding on the 2 initiatives relating to background checks for firearm purchases.
Yes.
I'm just curious on your personal views there.
I support the U.S. Constitution and the amendments to the U.S. Constitution. The Second Amendment is one of those. I think it's an important thing, not just for recreation. I think everybody always says, oh, it's recreation and protection, but it's a right for a reason. I do think we need to address, part of what we've heard, so there's the competing initiatives. The folks who want increased gun control, I think, are doing it out of a motive. I don't question it, right? We all want school shootings to stop, but I think we need to make sure that we're trying to stop them, not stop people who are not causing them. Which is why I'm actually working and diving into the mental health side of things with this issue. I've supported legislation. It's a bipartisan piece, and it's a very big piece. We took some time to review it. But the hope is to get at these folks who are committing these crimes, and try and get help to them or to circumvent the crimes from taking place. I think that's going to go a lot further in us protecting our families and our kids from violent offenders, rather than just telling law-abiding citizens, we're going to take away your rights. So, I'm open to ideas as long as they're consistent with our constitutional protections.
Very good. One of the chief criticisms of your opponent is intentionally limiting voter participation through lack of public town halls or pre-announced town halls. I want to give you a chance to respond to that.
Well, I take a very vigorous approach to town halls in this district. I think I've done over 56 public meetings, town halls, telephone town halls, issue-specific meetings, and I've done them in every region and will continue to do them. I think it's important that people have the opportunity to speak with a representative and to have face-to-face encounters. It's not easy to do a lot of regional meetings versus one or two big ones. But I have gotten the most positive feedback from my coffees and from my telephone town halls. And I've had different people explain why. I think some of it is the convenience of it, but some of it is there is a free flow of conversation and ideas versus people feeling like they're on a stage being intimidated, or at times yelled at, when they go to ask a question. So everybody's going to do it the way, different members do it how they want to do it. This is how I found is the most effective approach to communicating and hearing from the people I serve. So.
And some of that, your predecessor, Barritt, he had some troubles with town halls, just with some aggressive, maybe even combative members. And it's not just here in this district, but across the board. Does that play into kind of the?
Well, I remember after doing one meeting, I had this really frank conversation with this sweet little lady who started crying on the phone with me. She said, I wanted to talk about, I can't remember if it was related to Social Security. It was something that was really important to her. And she said, there is no way I was going to go up to the microphone. She said, I was intimidated. And after that, I just decided, you know what? I'm going to set this up in a way that allows people to share their ideas and their opinions without feeling threatened. Not everybody is a hard-charging, comfortable speaking in front of, 400 or 500 people. I am. But I do this. I want to make sure if it was my grandma, she would feel just as comfortable as the steel worker. And two, it's not a partisan thing. It doesn't limit people being hostile. It just, in my view, it's a smaller venue. Everybody is welcome. We don't choose Republicans or Democrats. That would be illegal. So I know that some detractors, I think my opponent has made erroneous comments about picking people who like me to come. That would be illegal for me to do. It's whoever lives in a region is invited to come. You can't cherry pick positives. And in certain regions, people are more open about about not agreeing with you, and in some regions they do. I think that more flows with what the region is, but you get the full mix. I have people every day who are free to share their positives and negatives with me, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
Excellent. And this kind of rolls into the next question. If you could let voters know just a couple major differences between you and your opponent, what would they be?
Well, I don't know a lot about my opponent, but I will tell you, for your readers in this region, it is really important to make sure that we get our federal forest health policy right, and our federal environmental policy right, because it impacts farmers, ranchers, hunters, recreationalists. I have supported legislation that would take a new approach to how we manage our federal forests, our Gifford Pinchot. I believe that our environment and our economy can coexist. We can selectively manage and harvest some of that timber. The forest is going to be healthier. It's not going to be prone to catastrophic wildfire or disease, and we're not going to have elk starvation. We're going to see a diverse wildlife. It's going to protect the owls if we have a more diverse approach. So I've been working on demonstration projects. See if we can get some demonstration projects to better manage the health of our forests. And I believe my opponents run the group for the last few years that sues us every time we try and live up to the Clinton or the Northwest Forest Plan. So right there, that's a major impact on jobs in our region. So I think it's really important for folks to know just who we are and what we believe. I also believe, that the EPA is overreaching in their new rule. It's out to comment right now, and we're fighting it. I'm fighting it on the Appropriations Committee, that says if you have a ditch or standing water on your property, that they're going to regulate it. It could now require a clean water permit for that pool of water out in your front yard. It may be seasonal, maybe just a stream that happens when there's heavy rain, but they can require what would cost about $270,000 for a clean water permit, and it could take over 2 years to get it. That's the type of extreme, I think, ideologically driven environmentalism that I think differentiates myself and really where folks who support some of those groups are at. And so I think people should look at the difference between my opponent and I in those areas. I talked about wanting to serve people. Jobs is the number one reason I believe I got elected in the first place. And I'd like to keep working. And I think there are 3 things we need to do. We need to make sure that we protect the businesses that we have. We give those small businesses or those new startups opportunities to grow, and we make sure our workforce is well trained and highly skilled. I mentioned a little bit about our forest policy. I had a bipartisan bill that we passed this year that basically overturns another extremist lawsuit. President Obama signed this into law that would protect about 107,000 forest-related jobs here in Washington State. I think that doing no harm and protecting those businesses we have is important. I've supported legislation that's going to help us get more access for those small companies, those startups, get access to credit. I think that's going to help us grow. And then when it comes to training our workforce, I did support a bipartisan bill that's going to allow the local workforce agencies to work a little better. But this is an area where I think that I'm exploring. I think we have more opportunities. You hear it, whether it's the highly skilled Microsofts of the world who say we don't have enough people to fill the open jobs that we have, or you're talking to a family farmer who can't get enough seasonal help to get their crops to market. So we've got several challenges, and I think making sure that we're working with our community colleges to build training programs around regional economies is one aspect of it. But I think those are some of the things that I started working on and I want to continue to work on. And one last point on that, I serve on the Appropriations Committee, and I think it is incredibly important. It's been important for this region, whether it's getting funding for specialty crops to increase our exports, whether it's keeping the forest roads open on Gifford Pinchot. We got to prevent those permanent closures, which I hope is going to help with our forest economy piece. But I also, part of the reason I wanted on that committee was because I believe that the budget and the debt is still a huge issue facing jobs and future generations. And in the 3 years that I've been there, we have reduced discretionary spending, the stuff we vote on every year, 3 years in a row. And that's dollar for dollar. That's not cutting the expected increase, which often happens. We've actually cut the underlying budget. So, getting our budget under control, I think, fits into the jobs and the economy piece, and it was also something that originally when I started I wanted to focus on, and I'm still very keen to. So.
Thank you. If we could shift just a little bit and talk about national security and ISIS, and I'd just love to hear your thoughts on that and what you think should be done, and what Congress should do.
This is a growing threat, but it's not a new one. This is one we've known about. In fact, I've gone back and read quotes from 5-6 years ago that if we didn't take steps, more specifically, if the president wasn't willing to take some steps then to nip things in the bud, that we would be dealing with essentially what we're dealing with today. And that's a growing terrorist organization that is really, I don't want to say taking over the Middle East, but erasing border lines. It's not something that's just going to happen in one part of the world. I think if they continue to grow, their focus would be to infiltrate and to cause harm here in America. So we have to take it seriously. I voted in September to give the president's plan a chance. I am skeptical that it's going to work. I think it's a little too late. I think had we done this a few months ago when ISIS was starting to go through Iraq and Syria, I think it could have stopped it. Right now, I'm hopeful, but I'm not optimistic that it's going to work. But I do believe he's the commander-in-chief, and he asked for us to support him in that, and so I did. In December, we're going to revisit. I have been taking time to go through a lot of the classified briefings and hear what our generals and our commanders on the ground are saying. If I've learned anything, it's in the last 10 years or so, is we shouldn't commit U.S. troops to something until we know what we want as an outcome, and we have some measurable goals. That doesn't mean we're going to know the entire strategy, but I'm really hesitant. I hear some people saying we should just let the whole thing happen on its own and we shouldn't engage. And then on the other extreme, I hear people saying, send troops, let's start a war. I'm in neither of those camps. I think we need to proceed very cautiously and with information. So in December, I'm hopeful that we're going to have some feedback from the strategy the president's implemented, and we'll be able to make some decisions from there. There is no easy answer to this. There is no simple answer. And I don't believe it's something that can be taken care of like this. So we need to be very cautious about how we get involved.
Bringing it back to your district, I'd like to just talk about one accomplishment that you feel has made a difference for your constituents, not just in the district, but here in Lewis County specifically.
Well, I mentioned preventing the forest roads from closure on Gifford Pinchot. There's about 4,000 miles of forest roads that the Forest Service was going to permanently destroy. And we got them to stop that. That's going to help hopefully with the forest economy, but with the recreational economy, people's ability to go up there and use snow parks or to hunt. I mentioned the specialty crops. Well, agriculture is still a economic opportunity. It still provides jobs here. Growing our export business. We're a very trade dependent state and region, and growing those opportunities is important. I've been able to get legislation in there. Writing legislation that impacts I-5. I mentioned that, I was able to help stop the I-5 only solution, the wall around I-5 that essentially would have created a bathtub effect for the Twin Cities. And I'm hopeful as we get those recommendations going forward with flooding that I'll be able to help additionally moving forward. So those are about 3 different issues, but you can't, it's funny, a lot of people judge elected leaders by how much legislation they pass, and I've never been one that has felt like I need to go and pass a lot of laws. I do lots of tweaks, I fix things, but an area where I found an amazing amount of fulfillment has been in casework. Just this year we have closed over 190 cases helping veterans get care. In fact, we were instrumental in getting, it's been a 2.5-year fight with the VA to get their mobile medical unit to come down. They're going to start service in Raymond because of our efforts to provide health care for veterans in rural areas. They have had a mobile medical unit that's supposed to serve rural veterans for, they've had it for several years, and it's sat dormant. And I came and did actually, it was at the Veterans Museum. We did a VA kind of resource fair a few years ago, and somebody there tipped me off and said they've got this unit and they don't use it, and we would like to serve veterans in Lewis County with that. And so I went to work, and about a week and a half ago, they announced that they're finally going to be coming down for a week a month. So veterans can come get prescriptions filled, they can get eyes checked, they can get immunizations, there's different types of services they can get, so hopefully it'll save them a drive to a major medical center. So I feel good about what we've done to serve people in this region, and I want to keep doing it.
Excellent. Got you down to about 2 minutes here, but last one is just to give you an opportunity to talk about something we haven't asked you about. If there's an issue you wanted to discuss.
Oh, anything.
Mm-hmm.
Good grief.
It's a freebie.
A freebie. Let me take a step kind of back up to the 30,000 level foot. We've talked about specifics. This is a job that, number one, I love and I'm honored to get to do. It's also not something I want to do forever. My husband and I made a very specific decision about running for this term. I have a baby daughter at home who's going to be getting a transplant later this year, hopefully, or early next year. And she's doing fabulous, but it's my family. It means that I take time away from my family to go to Washington, D.C. every week, or to drive up and visit an area in the district, or to meet with constituents. And so it's not something that I do lightly. I give up time with my family to to get to do it. And I wouldn't have it any other way. This is worth it to me, to make sure that our country and our region are protected and have opportunities going forward. I want other people's kids to have opportunities. I want there to be work opportunities here. I don't want people to have to leave, or their kids to leave, or their grandkids to leave to find employment. I want people to be able to grow and thrive here. This is, I think Southwest Washington is not just the best area in the state. I think it's one of the best areas in the country. And I want to protect it. I love it. This is what I've chosen to do, and I'd be honored if people would give me the chance to keep doing it for another term.
You think this would be your last term?
Oh gosh, I have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if we're going to see if the voters let me go back, Ms. Gold.
Right. Our last one's just one we are asking every candidate that has come in just for fun. What's one thing that most voters probably don't know about you?
Probably don't know about me. When I worked for a nonprofit, it was in between one college to the next up in Seattle. I worked selling hot dogs at UW Husky Stands. That was a humbling and exciting experience. Let's see. I got to, when I worked for that same group, we raised money and to send ourselves over to Ground Zero was about, I think it was a 6-month anniversary. And we got to work in St. Paul's Cathedral serving rescue workers, firefighters, construction personnel who were on 24-hour shifts. They'd come in and we'd serve them eggs, make sure there was literally people were sleeping on pews and on the ground. We changed their bedding. We did that for a couple weeks, and it was one of the most amazing experiences I've ever had. And actually, I do think, I was in college at the time. I remember listening after the trade towers were attacked that night when the president read. I was a college kid and still don't have cable, but we didn't have cable, so I was listening to it on the radio, and when he read the Psalm 23, and I thought, you know what, I want to be a part of protecting our country and protecting this region and I think we all felt a surge of patriotism at that point, but I love this country, and I think some of those formative experiences led me to what I'm doing now.
Excellent. Very good.
Wow.
That's it.